Welcome to Live Shadows channel. Before anything, you subscribe to. In 1980, at the age of 24, Ian McCormick left his native New Zealand to travel and gain experience after saving some money for university. Ian traveled to Asia and Africa but returned to New Zealand. Although at first he had little interest in Eastern philosophies and enlightenment, he gradually abandoned it and believed that God and life after death do not exist, and spent his life traveling and having fun. One night in 1982 in New Zealand, he was with some fishermen. A local friend had gone to tea. One night I had gone to the small island of Mauritius to catch crabs. Accustomed to a cooler climate than the natives, I was wearing only a thin, short-sleeved wetsuit, although the fishermen advised that a thicker, long-sleeved wetsuit should be worn to fully cover the body. That night I was attacked by several box jellyfish, which the locals call invisible fish, and I was stung 5 times on my hands. I didn't know until then that this fish is very poisonous and a bite is usually fatal. I was about to close my eyes when a voice told me, "If you sleep you will never wake up." I wondered who spoke to me and looked around but saw no one. I knew I would die if I wasn't injected with the antidote soon. The places where I was bitten on my hands were very swollen and took the form of burn blisters. I felt a lot of heat in my body and my breathing was gradually getting harder. I dragged myself to the side of the road. I saw 3 Indian-looking men there who were taxi drivers. I asked them. 2 of them did not care and left, but one of them stopped and gave me a ride. On the way he started talking to me and asked me which hotel I was staying at because he thought I was a tourist. When he realized I wasn't a tourist, he thought I had lied to him and stopped the taxi and forced me out, paralyzed and half-conscious, because he assumed I had no money and wouldn't charge his fare. I said to myself, if the world is such that a person is willing to do this to his fellow man for a few dues. Where he takes me was in front of a small Chinese hotel called Tamarind Bay, and by chance a fisherman I knew saw me on the sidewalk and passed out. He took me inside the hotel, and with the help of some Chinese men who were there, they took me to the hotel restaurant, which was no longer customers at the time, and laid me down on a table. But after a few minutes, I realized that the fisherman himself had left. Despite my explanation, everyone thought I was drunk or on drugs and didn't believe. By the time the ambulance arrived, my bone marrow was dying and my body was becoming completely paralyzed. On the way to the hospital, suddenly at one point, my whole life was displayed before my eyes. At the time, I did not believe in God, but at the time I was dying and I did not know if I would face another world after death or if only emptiness and destruction awaited me. At the same time, I saw my mother praying for me and asking me to pray to God from the bottom of my heart. I must mend. Later, when I returned home and talked to my mother, she told me that at that moment my face appeared before her eyes and a voice told her that, "Your son is not far from death. Pray for him right now." I didn't know what to pray and what to say. My mind was completely blank, but I shouted from the inside that, "God, if you are true, inspire me with your prayer." Immediately prayers appeared before my eyes were not, God, forgive our sins and oppressions. I thought to myself that it is too late. Oh, I think God answered my prayer because those words disappeared and immediately new words appeared before my eyes. Those who forgive those who have wronged you. I said to myself, it's simple. I'm not a grudge person and I can forgive everyone. Those who have used me, or put a hat on my head or stabbed me in the back. But suddenly the face of the taxi driver who threw me out of his car appeared in front of me and a voice said to me, can you forgive this man who left you dying on the street? What did I tell myself to forgive these? No, I can't forgive them. They almost killed me. But I thought to myself, what are these? Is God talking to me? This is real and not an illusion. Maybe everything they say is true. I'm dying and if it's true I'm taking a big gamble. I said, God, if you can forgive me and forgive all that I have done, I will also forgive these men. I forgive. I promise I will never seek revenge on them. Immediately the faces of those men disappeared from my face. I said that with this thought, more prayers appeared before me and for the first time I was able to understand the prayer from the bottom of my heart. By reciting these prayers, a deep peace descended on me. Ambulance reached the hospital and stopped. The staff there put me on a wheelchair and took me to the hospital. In the ICU room, the nurse took my blood pressure twice, but my blood pressure was almost 0. At the time, my body was completely paralyzed and my vision was very blurred. The doctors. I later realized that for 15 minutes I was completely dead. As soon as my eyes closed on the hospital bed, I found myself wide awake and alert and in a completely dark place. I thought I must be in the hospital, near my bed, wondering why the lights had been turned off. I decided to turn on the lights and tried to find a light switch by touching it, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't touch a wall or anything. I tried to make my bed, I tried to touch it, but there was nothing there. I held him. It was very unusual and strange for me. I knew I was standing there alive and awake, but I couldn't touch or feel any part of my body. As I stood there in awe of what was going on, I felt that the darkness there was not just a physical darkness, rather, it is a spiritual and spiritual darkness. Gradually I felt that something or other people were there. A very bad cold and scary feeling came over me, like the feeling that evil and negative creatures were staring at me in that absolute darkness. I thought to myself that maybe I am in hell, and I thought to myself that maybe I deserve to be here too. There, time had no meaning, and those who were there, they did not know if they had been there for 10 minutes or 10,000 years. Suddenly, to my utter disbelief, a very bright ray of light penetrated deep into the darkness and lifted me up and out of that place. I found myself in the middle of a beam of pure white light, very bright. It seemed that this light was shining from an opening from. You may ask why I went to the dark and hellish place in the first place. God told me later that there was a place where if those prayers had not been in the ambulance, I would have stayed in it. I moved towards the light and entered this hole and found myself inside a long narrow tunnel or passageway. I could see the light from the other end of the tunnel shining into it and onto me. The source of this light was so bright that I thought it must be the center of the universe. I felt like the light. It wasn't just a physical light, it had a feeling in itself. Halfway through the tunnel, a wave of light came to me again and filled me with pure peace. For the third time, a wave of light passed over me and filled me with many joys. At first I could not see anything in the darkness, but now in this light I could see my spiritual body, and I saw that my body was made of the same light that was shining from the tunnel. Went to the head, he reached the tunnel and came out of it. I saw that I was ST. It seems that even all the stars receive their energy from this source. As I was standing in the presence of this light, I thought to myself, is he just a source of energy, or is there someone in the middle of this light? Immediately a voice responded to my thought and asked me, Ian, do you want to go back? I thought to myself, return. Where am I? And with this thought, looked behind the head. He looked up and saw that the tunnel returned to the darkness from which I had come. I said to myself, dark. Ner replied, if you want to come back, you have to look at everything with a new look and light. I thought to myself, a new light. I see the light. Are you the real light? Immediately words appeared in front of me. God is light and there is no darkness in him. I had never read the Bible before and did not know at the time that this was actually a verse from it. I thought to myself that God is light, pure light. I see no darkness or shadow here. I just came out of the dark. Am I in? I moved towards the darkness, but again a wave of light washed over me. I felt a pure love flowing inside me. I thought to myself, how can God love me? I've used his name to curse. I've slept with many women. I've trampled all the boundaries of God. He left it. God, it's not possible for you to love me. But all this time waves of light and his unconditional love flowed into me one after another. It was impossible for me to believe that God could love a sinner like me. I started crying uncontrollably. The light seemed to draw me into its depths. The center of this light was very bright and I went towards it. I could feel a healing presence in this light, healing my wounded and broken heart. This light penetrated the deepest depths of my heart, where no one had ever penetrated before. Suddenly, in the depths of the most extraordinary light scene appeared. A man appeared before my eyes who was unlike anyone or anything I had ever seen in my life. His clothes radiated colorful light. By moving forward, more waves of light poured over me, which gave me a great sense of security. I, who was only a few steps away from him, tried to recognize his face. As I approached, he stepped aside and a new world appeared behind him. Green meadows, clear springs, hills full of grass and flowers and trees, mountains in the distance, and a beautiful blue sky overhead. When I looked at the grass in front of me, I could see the same light that I saw in him in all of creation. I knew in my heart I looked behind me at the world, say goodbye to the cruelty I came from. At the time, I saw the sight of my mother in front of the tunnel. Until I saw him, I realized that there is at least one person in the world who loved me. He prayed for me every day and always tried to show me that this way is the right way. I thought to myself, what will my mother think if I enter? Will he know that I have gone to heaven, or will he think that I have gone to hell because he knew that I have no faith? I realized that I must look through his eyes of love, affection, joy, peace, and forgiveness, and I must look at everything from his heavenly perspective and not from the limited and temporary perspective of the world. I looked behind me and the tunnel again and saw the image of my entire family, and thousands upon thousands of other people. I asked who these are. They He told me that if I do not return to Earth, many of these people will not have the opportunity to know God in their life. He said, "Oh child, open your eyes and see." I opened my eyes and saw him on the hospital bed. An Indian doctor was holding my right leg up and working on my body. He was plunging a knife or something sharp into my leg, oblivious to the fact that I was alive and looking at him. His gaze fell on my face and he saw that my right eye was open and I was looking at him. His color paled and I felt that his being was filled with fear and terror. I was thinking about what happened to me in the odd. When my gaze was fixed on theirs, they cowered in fear and backed away. I was told that I had been dead for 15 minutes. I prayed to God that night and asked God to heal me so that I can walk out of the hospital on my own 2 feet. The next day I was completely fine and walked out of Gadam Women's Hospital. I was no longer the same person. Since then my life has completely turned upside down and everything has changed for the better. Ian McCormick now serves as a pastor in several churches and has. Thank you for following, liking and commenting.